He's someone who can be really admired. And the reason I want to make this video is when I see hit pieces come out from people and they have a call to action from all of these relationship therapists out there wanting to analyze these text messages that have come out from Jonah Hill. It really highlights the backwash that is feminism and the backwash that comes out with women who want to defend women from their own narcissistic behavior. So what I've seen here is one of Jonah's exes. For those of you that don't know this story, what's happened is one of Jonah's exes has come forward with a bunch of text messages that they've been sent. They sent each other when they were in a relationship, mind. So their relationship is over, and Jonah has started a new relationship with someone, and he's just given birth to his partner's just given birth to a child. Olivia is the new partner's name, and Sarah is the old partner's name for brevity and for context. So, what's shown up in the last few days is these messages that have come out between Jonah Hill and his ex-partner. And what Jonah's being accused of here is, he's a narcissist, he's NPD, he's an emotional abuser. And what I'd like to say from coming from a man who's also been accused of the same and has also been able to be with that part of him that is an emotional abuser. It's like, yeah, sure, those accusations can be correct. And are they really helpful? When we have therapists and people coming out and saying how to spot a narcissist, how to spot someone with NPD, missing the point that in order to get into a relationship with someone like this, you have to have these traits as well at some level. They might not be overt, they're most likely covert. So, what I'm going to do here is I've looked at some photos of Jonah Hill and done a bit of exploration of his past. And I want to speak to the man that's underneath the skin. And I also want to speak to what I see from a characterology point of view. Now, if he was my client, I would address him differently. I'll be able to have a to and fro as to what's going on in his life. And if you follow Jonah's career, he's a talented actor. And that doesn't put aside that he has relationship issues, because all actors do. And if there's one actor that I think does really well, it's I can't remember his name now. He sells vodka and he did Deadpool. Can't remember his name. I'm sure his name will pop into my head later. But that guy in their relationship, exceptionally well. And what I see here is between the humor and the confidence, he's able to keep the relationship going. Now with Jonah, let's get a little bit into Jonah. So if you look at his family dynamic, so you have a successful father who, in characterology, masochism and psychopathy, and then a mother who has rigidity and psychopathy and orality. So what you'll see here is a mother injury, and Jonah's weight, Jonah's size, Jonah's density is based on his relationship with his mother. And I couldn't find much information about Jonah when he was around 3 years old. But what's apparent here is a suppression and repression of who he really is at the core. And how that plays out in life is you overeat, you overconsume, and then when you reach adulthood, it becomes embarrassing. And what I'd assert in all of this is, like, he was bullied as a kid. And to take all of this into context really starts building a picture of who he's become as a man. And then if you have a look at his relationship past, and I'll grab some photos here I've grabbed some photos from and some links from websites like Looper, Body, Height, Weight, and Distractify. And I'll share those in a minute. And listen to the end here, because characterology and character analysis gives insights into an individual that traditional therapy you won't get. So you will have specialists coming up out of the woodwork, just accusing Jonah of being um, an NPD without interviewing him, without having a conversation. That's what I'm doing here. But I'm also prefacing it with like, this guy is a normal guy. He's a normal guy. And for me, getting accused of being an emotional abuser was crazy making for me. Because when you have an injury that Jonah has, this masochistic injury, you are a people pleaser. And for someone who is attempting to break out of their people pleasing nature, they can lean too far into being controlling, too far into defending themselves. And this is part of the journey in being in relationships. So, what else I'll speak to about Jonah's past is when you have this instinct injury, when you have this injury of masochism, you can become a bit of a, it can become a bit of a Captain Save-A-Ho. And if you don't know what that means, it is you attract women and you're attracted to women that need saving because you have such a low self worth that you get your worth from saving women, which might have come from his relationship with his mother. Particularly when he was a teenager, his mother was diagnosed with cancer. And in the teenage years, it's a pivotal stage in sexuality and identity. And he lashed out a bit as a teenager, not being able to reconcile losing his mother. But I would also assert, based on his size, that even before then, his mother was quite suppressing, and his dad didn't do anything about it. Why? Because in some households, it's easier to keep the peace. And in keeping the peace type households, you don't expose what's really going on. For example, his dad makes a lot of money, and if there's a lot of money involved, then maybe you don't want to cause a fuss. Maybe mum didn't want to lose her golden egg. His mum is also a fashion designer, so she's in the public eye. She has wealthy clients, she has status. And what happens with an injury around status, particularly with masochism, is you're forced to be something that you're not. And as you'll see, as Jonah progresses in size, there's a moment where he becomes really thin. And in the thinness and becoming really thin, you embrace what's known as the rigidity. And in rigidity, you start wearing masks to be something that you're not. So, underneath all of that, there's this fragile 3-year-old boy who's struggling to find his identity in the world, trying to find love from women in particular. And he knows that he has issues in relationships. He knows that there's something about him that isn't right. There's an inadequacy that keeps popping up, and it relates to his weight. And this is really unfair because when you have an injury like masochism, traditional therapy doesn't work. Like, it just doesn't. It gets you so far and then it caves in because there's a self-loathing and a self-hatred there that you can't talk through. You can't medicate. What ends up happening is you just implode. Your sadness takes over you. And if you look at people that have this injury as well, like his brother, and his brother died of a heart attack in 2017, and he was 40-year-old brother, and he died of a heart attack. So what I'm seeing is a pattern in the family system that things that need to be exposed and spoken to are not. They're hidden, they're buried. And with high status families, especially in Hollywood, those kind of secrets of what's been going on, the fighting, the truth, does mum really love dad? Does dad really love mum? Has there been any infidelity? All of these questions that get raised don't get approached openly, they get buried. And there's a picture of him with his mum on the red carpet. I think it was for Wolf of Wall Street. And if you look at Jonah's body language, like, he's shocked. Like, there's something about him, this poor bloke is not wanting to be there with his mum on the red carpet. Now, in that, with masochism, you tend to attract rigids, and rigids that bully you, rigids that want to take advantage of you. And that's what I see in Jonah's life, and particularly in Wolf of Wall Street, where Leonardo DiCaprio, being confident, sexually confident, not that great in long-term relationships, but out to prove a point that he can get any woman that he wants. Right? This is a heart to pelvic split that Leo has, and in that, being a bit of a bully towards Jonah, knowing that he can throw his weight around, um, and Leo's like looks physically stronger than Jonah, but then Jonah being able to get his own back, have some retaliation during Wolf of Wall Street with the sushi scene, and with masochism there is a penchant for passive aggressiveness. And this is what I see in those texts. It's passive aggressiveness, including when he says, okay, bless. And his character, Jonah's character in a lot of his movies, is passive aggressive. He's typecast as someone who is passive aggressive. He does not know how to deal with his anger. And this is a mother injury. This is a matriarchal injury. This is an injury that comes from not being able to tantrum as a child, having a mother that suppresses the tantrum, having a mother that doesn't allow you to fully be with all of your rage. Now, Sarah Bradley, this woman that released the photos, and intention's important here, and action is just as important. So this is quoting her from an article in I think it's either Looper or Body Height Weight. Bradley admitted that, although the timing can seem bad, she hoped that Hill's current fiance and the mother of his child had seen the posts so that she could make an informed decision of how she wants to care for herself and her baby. And this is where we see the female, the sisterhood, the matriarchal injuries come out, the terrible mother, the devouring mother, and why Sarah Brady might not be a mother. There's an injury here. You can feel it, right? There's something malevolent about what she wants to do here. This isn't supportive. This isn't a one-to-one message with her and his new fiance, Olivia. This is about her wanting to publicly humiliate Jonah, right? And it's been years. It's almost been 2 years since Sarah and Jonah were together. And this is what happens when the feminazis, when women want to jump on bandwagons to berate men, is they don't take ownership of their own place in those relationships. So what was Sarah getting out of that relationship? Can she own that some of the stuff, that there was some truth in what Jonah was mentioning in those messages? So in this, like, Jonah is prone to passive ideation. He's someone who has an injury where, is his life really worth living? Does he really want to be around? And in that, emotional abuse doesn't happen in an echo chamber. Like I mentioned before, it always takes two. Then while he might be using therapy speak, is what not everyone, but the therapists that are speaking to this, the therapy speak, maybe that's all the language that he had. Maybe that's the language that's helped him get some access and some control over his life. Maybe he uses that. So, labeling people as NPD is fantastic for identifying the pathology, for identifying patterns of behavior, but it really misses the individual under the pathology, which is why I do what I do. The body tells me who's there underneath the masks and the patterns of behavior and the defenses and the armoring. There's an individual there. And right now, what I see is a 3-year-old child that wasn't allowed to be himself, that was humiliated by his mother repeatedly. Whether or not she wants to own that is up to her. Whether or not Jonah can find those memories is up to him. And it doesn't matter what their relationship is now. This is when he was a kid. And it's okay that they may have fixed their relationship now. However, in his body, there is a memory of a 3-year-old that's struggling, right? In that also with Jonah, there's am I as good as my dad yet? I really see this penduluming between wanting to find acceptance from other people. The tattoos, for example. Am I cool yet? Am I cool yet? Have I got enough tattoos yet? Have I got enough tattoos to make me seem that I'm cool yet? You know, and this desire to be loved for who he is at the core. And this. I feel sad about this because there's something that's missing here, and the people that are going to start parading that he's an emotional abuser around without understanding the context, just purely doing it at a therapeutic pathological level, are going to miss the being. They're going to miss the Jonah. Now, Stutz, I don't know if you saw the Netflix doco on Stutz. I couldn't watch the whole thing. Like, the dude is boring to me. Like, he's a fucking oral for starters, and orals just don't shut up. And their language is not direct; it is waffly, and that's annoying to rigids. Not for a masochist though. A masochist might love it because there's someone's actually paying attention to them. Now, in that interview with Stutz, Jonas spoke about his mum pushing for him to lose weight. And this is where that serial monogamy with a mother comes in. And if you're familiar with the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, that's a book that I recommend for Jonah, where he's still in a relationship with his mother. And in order for men to own that, they can transcend a lot of their relationship failures, their inadequacies, because the mother and son connection is one that really it's a hot button, and it's an issue. It's the mother and son connection is something that is profound and is at the crux of a lot of relationship issues, including mother-in-law issues. So back to the Stutz interview and Jonah talking about his mum and the push to lose weight. He said that being an overweight child made him feel inherently bad due to his messages from society, his doctor and his mum. And this is the piece with masochism, is there's a double bind of that they know they need to change and they hate being obedient. They hate listening to advice. So what I hear here is someone's told him, like, especially if his brother's died at 40 from a heart attack, it's like, Jonah, you got to take care of yourself, brother. You got to do the things that are going to prolong your life. Like, what's going on? What is it about you? What is being suppressed in you that you feel like you need to eat? Or indulge in things that are beyond necessary. Then his images change, but then even in the rigids, the masochist always comes back unless you deal with the emotional issue. And in that, Hill also said that he used to think that female figures in his life wouldn't accept his appearance because of his childhood experience. And he's right. He's right. They won't. They won't. They will always find something wrong with him. The insecurity, the inadequacy will always pop up for him until he addresses these core emotional injuries. And talking therapy will not do it for him. It won't. It will not. It's in his body. To extract and integrate masochism requires body work. It requires somatic work. It requires going into the parts of his body that hold the trauma of his inadequacy. And for him in particular, I'd work his belly, I'd work his buttocks, I'd work his legs, and I'd work his neck. And there's part of him that, because he uses humor as a defense, this is a classic masochistic trait. Using humor as a defense, you deny the reality and the gravity of your life. So if you're someone who uses humor to deny the gravity of your life, what are you avoiding? What are you not coming face to face with that you need to use humor for? And humor is really important to defer if you're overwhelmed, if you need to sidestep the gravity of something. Sure, use humor, but when it becomes a pattern and you start avoiding, when you're like patterningly, when you're avoiding things out of a pattern, whether it's relationships, whether it's conversations, whether it's health, whether it's work, whether it's finance, You need to confront it. And sometimes you need people to point that out to you. What's so funny about that? It's not funny. What's so funny about that? It's hurt. It's sadness. And it's the sadness, the gravity of the sadness, that can be used as leverage to soothe these injuries and become something else, embodied, separate from the family dynamic, forging your own path. But right now, like he's stepping out, he's doing his father thing, like having a kid, and having a kid will also bring up his injuries. But right now, in the context of those texts, the emotionally abusive texts, 2 years old and out of context. And the mother injury right now, the mother wound injury, matriarchal injury, put patriarchy aside, matriarchy. That's what needs focus right now. This collusion of women that keep weak men in power. This collusion of women that do not look at themselves. And this is what this is all about. This is about the mother injury. It's about mothers not taking responsibility for their children, mothers not setting a good example, and mothers unable to cut the umbilical cord, whether it be an emotional one or a spiritual one, from their sons in particular. So, if you've got some juice out of this, throw it in the comments. If you've got any questions, throw it in the comments. If this was entertaining for you, which I love doing these, they're entertaining for me, then say so. Express it. Practice your expression. And thank you so much for listening. 22 minutes. Not bad. All right. Mad love. Bye.